Nats FM is brought to you by Synadia, stewards of the Nats Project.
Hey folks, welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Nats FM. Kind of figured let's go with the year for each season. So 2024, Season 2, bit of a weird number system, but here we are. So hello Byron, is it too late to say Happy New Year?
No, it's never too late, because I still write down 2023 at times, so it's fine. Still transitioning.
At times? That's my default. Default Dave is still in 2023, which is a little bit embarrassing, but hey-ho. So how are you, my friend? You well?
Yeah, really well. Good holiday, good, transition to the new year. So really enjoyed the time off, and super excited to with what we're going to talk about today. So, and how was your holiday?
Oh, mine was fantastic in every way, shape, and form. Yeah, I finished with Christmas and then went to bed for a few days with COVID. So I had a nice long rest. So that was great. Yeah, but no, all joking aside, once I shut that off, it was really nice to unplug, relax, and then just kind of think about the up and coming chaos of 2024, which we're now in, leading us nicely to Rethink Con 2024. And I guess as a warning to anybody listening to this going, why the hell are you going to talk about something that you've already been through? It might be nice to share some of the thinking, some of the details around that, and not just as a Synadia trying to sell you stuff, but more of the kind of heart and soul as to why and the important things that we wanted to cover. And obviously we'll cover some of the glaring issues as well that we had, unfortunately. So in your own words, Byron, Rethink Con 2024. I don't even know how to really ask what I'm trying to ask here. We try to deliver a set of useful information that put Nats in people's mind's eye. Not just, again, for the sake of, we're here, come and buy stuff from us, but more, we're here, trust us, real people are using this.
Yeah. Yeah, so just taking a step back even. So this is our second Rethink Con that we did. We did one at the end of 2022.
Can we call that 23? Was that Rethink Con 23?
It was technically end of 2022, but it's all right.
22.
Yeah. But yeah, the motivation originally was, and that was a very different format, but the intention of it always, and the same intention, just in a slightly different format this time, was again like getting Nats in people's mind eye and being able to articulate why Nats is a good technology, how can you leverage it, how are companies leveraging it for a diverse set of use cases. And most people who know Synadia, or if you don't know Synadia, like we employ a lot of the Nats maintainers. Our founder and CEO is literally the creator of Nats 13 years ago. And the company was formed, to actually get Nats even more out in the world and build on top of Nats, provide, services and things like that. And that's all well and good. But it's like, we're the biggest advocates of Nats and trying to pervade the industry, which is incumbent by other, we've talked about this in previous episodes of, HTTP centric minds, and like that's fine for certain use cases, but it shouldn't be the default. People need to kind of think outside of the box and understand that there's other technologies that are better, a way better fit for the vast majority of distributed systems use cases. But that's not what this episode's about. But with with Rethink Con this year, we wanted to put, unlike the first time, we wanted to put customers and users in a diverse set of industries front and center. And so if you go back to the playlist, it's on YouTube, you'll see that beyond the introduction, we get immediately into 5 wonderful people talking about their companies, their use case, and how Nats is being leveraged there, and how in many ways it has changed the way that they actually think about problem solving in their respective domains. So rather than, you, like, as you said, like Synadia yapping on about how great Nats is because we're trying to sell you crap, it's like, let's get the actual people who don't have that bias front and center, so you can hear from them. And that's what a core focus was this year in terms of the format versus the prior time. And I think it was really well received.
Yeah, and it because it was so different from the previous, and I guess the first Rethink Con, I kind of sat there as well, going over some of the videos, and hopefully it came across right. And that's one of the things that I kind of, I lie awake in bed at night thinking about. It wasn't a case of trying to convince you in a very kind of, large corporate way that what we've got is right. It just, the idea was to try and share that it changes the way you think about the problem space, even if it's not NATS, is what you use at the end of the day to try and solve some of those things. It was by thinking differently about the problem space, you can solve for very different dimensions, instead of trying to make a database fit to every single problem. Just change the thinking, and hopefully that came across, because some of this is quite deep, even for me. Like I'm no stranger to distributed systems, but even now the smallest projects that I build, I think about how I can, say, improve the responsiveness of a UI, yet allow asynchronous tasks to happen on the back end without overcomplicating it, without using big frameworks and more crap that I've got to maintain and look after. And I think it was trying to get some of that passion. It always feels like secret sauce, but it's not, to try and get that across. And I always, maybe I'm a little bit biased when I think about this, but I think about large enterprises, and like a bank, I mean, the Finaco example was a good one. I kept asking the same question, is there anything bad you can say? It doesn't have to be good. Tell us something you dislike. Tell us something you don't. And when he was kind of talking to these, or when I was talking to these people, and the guests were just brilliant, there was nothing really that came across as like poison or vile or stuff they wanted to hide. I tried to give them real opportunities to just hit us with the negatives. So it isn't like this whole, he said it earlier on, we're going to try and sell you crap and here's only the good stuff. It tried to be the broadest cover, but that doesn't necessarily come across when you're in an event like that. You can't turn around and say, we've tried to be as absolutely transparent and as fair as we can be. It's kind of hard to say really out loud, but
so let's dig into that a little bit. So just for the listeners, David did a Herculean effort in coordinating and recording and editing. He did all of that. So what actually went into that? And I know, like, obviously we were planning things together and reaching out to people to, see if they're willing to be on camera and that kind of thing. But what actually was involved in that end to end? Because it was one of those things from my perspective. It's like, yep, I'm going to record with, Franco from Finaco, and then magic happens. And then we have a video that is awesome. Like, what does that even look like? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's nice. I'm just going to throw my hands in the air at this point and say, I'm not going to tell you now. I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is, are the videos perfect? No, they're not. But they are unique because each person was unique. Their business was unique. Their use case, their approach was unique. So Max from Schaeffler, he did an amazing job. And it was a solo video. He wanted to do it on his own. Gave him the option, do you want to do it Q&A? Do you want to do it like assisted, like a narrator where I ask a question and, tell myself out the video? And he wanted to do it on his own. And for Max, I tried to just be there, give him some advice to get him through the video and to make sure that he could get the points across without being frustrated and without coming across, either overly eager or too fresh. But if I wind it all the way back from the beginning, what goes into this? First of all, a base script. What is it that we're trying to portray? Why do we want to get these guests to portray that? And in kind of two ways. The outcome of that is a lovely little video around what they do, who they are, what their product is, and the importance of their product to them. But then where NATS comes in and underpins that, and it might be an enabling function, or it just might be an accelerator or something. So it was like how we extract the magic from the guest invariably means getting them to talk about what they do and how they're trying to sell that thing. But each script therefore becomes customized to the guest. So we start with the base, but then we have to figure out what kind of mode do they want to operate in, what information, ultimately we're trying to extract, and how can we have this like happy unity between, a Synadia and, customer and consumer style of approach. But then the technical problems kick in, and anybody listening to this will go, yeah, but the videos were so varying in terms of the quality. So we had this lovely, brilliant idea that we were going to send every guest a goodie bag. And that was going to consist of a microphone and a camera and maybe some, deadening foam and some cables and all this kind of stuff. And then the logistics of trying to do that globally were an absolute nightmare. And then as well, I've got to give credit to everybody we spoke to. We kind of give them the option, would you like us to send you a goodie bag? And everybody said no. So then what do? Andrew Gracie, I know Andrew won't mind me talking about this at all, but he came along with a pair of AirPods. And the audio quality was pretty bad, like trying to recover that from the recording, almost prompting a new recording. But it varied across the board, and then the platform that we record on ran into some issues from an encoding point of view, and it would chop off the quality. So I ended up going back to cloud backup recordings to get some of the footage out, because it kind of reminds me of the actual event itself, how that went wrong. We'll be back to that in a moment. But I mean, what goes into it? Ultimately, 70 hours of editing videos went into that. And probably another 10 to 15 hours of actually on the calls, taking the recordings. And the calls were chopped up and edited quite heavily as well. So for probably 15-minute video you saw, or 20-minute video, there might have been 45 minutes of recording time there, and I have to kind of go over that, review it, build it as a storyboard, chop it all and edit it, and then obviously run it through the audio processing stuff. But it's all the little things as well, Byron, to be honest. It's like if I was recording in 4K with really high quality audio, I had to downgrade that to match what the guests had as well. So it was interesting, but it consumed me for like a good week and a half, maybe. I just didn't sleep and eat, like the whole day. The sun would come up, the sun would go down, food would appear in front of me, and I just kind of carried on. I'm not trying to brag or anything, but it was an effort well worth doing, and seeing all the videos online now as well. It's kind of like just a bit of a smile maker, certainly for the beginning of the year.
Yeah. No, again, it was amazing amount of effort and awesome outcome. And for listeners, what's hilarious is that only a handful of people at Synadia themselves actually saw those videos before they went live, which was brilliant. It was just like the excitement could build up, and you get to see this for the first time. So other than maybe, a handful, 2 to 3 people who actually watched the videos prior to going live, just to review them, literally all of Synadia didn't actually see those videos, or they saw them at the same time that you did at Rethink Con. So that was super cool.
On that point, but that included our CEO, our COO, and pretty much all of the C-levels didn't see the video. So it was kind of risky as well from our point of view, but I think it kind of worked well in the end.
Yeah, it worked out well.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Yeah. And then we get on to Rethink itself now. I think there are, in my mind's eye, 2 massive takeaways from that. One, clearly is Nex. The excitement felt like it was going to just make all of us start, kind of like hovering off the floor, anti-gravity tech by excitement, I think was a bit of an understatement. Kevin just delivered the wow, really. But the thing I want to probably address first is that Crowdcast seemed to have a bit of a wobble. And that one kind of ruined my entire weekend, to be honest. We got to like 75%, and then Byron disappeared from the screen. And then all of us tried to jump on the screen and take over and, jump on the stage, but none of the controls worked. So we couldn't get Byron off the stage, nor could we put ourselves on the stage. And then I remember I was thinking, well, it's a content delivery platform, right? So it should be able to take some refreshes and some F5s. Let's do some refreshes. And that kind of sporadically worked for some people and not for other people. And then we all went to support, and we couldn't get to the support site, and it just went wrong. And the that was painful.
Hilarious part about that was that I was still presenting. So from my perspective as the host, I was presenting, and I was coming off the roadmap section, going into the community section, and then I get the back channel message, which everyone should have when you're doing a thing like that. Both first from David and then from Derek, the CEO, and then he's like, "We can't see you anymore." And I was like, "Huh?" And I was like literally just going along, doing my thing, and the strange part was that the chat was still going, the chat was still working, and from my perspective, everything was fine. And then people were like, I can't see Byron anymore. And I was like, okay. And so I immediately did, the hard refresh. I re-logged in, re-entered the stage, and I thought it fixed it, but people still couldn't hear me. Some people they couldn't see me. And then other people started refreshing, and then some people said they could hear me, but they couldn't see me. And I was like, what is going on? So long story short, having a whole bunch of engineers and, technical people as part of this event, they were empathetic, and they were like, okay, yeah, it's the platform that's sort of falling apart. It wasn't really kind of our negligence. And so the chat kept going. We sort of did a couple, last minute things. And then Derek had the brilliant idea of saying, hey, let's set up a Zoom call and have like a very personal AMA to wrap this event up. And we probably got, I don't remember the exact number. You were on it till the end, probably like, 60 people or so. 50,
yeah,
60.
about that. It kind of varied between, say, 40 to 60 people. We had a good number of people transfer over.
So and that was great, and that went on for quite a while. And it was just, again, reviewing, calling out our final announcement that I was so looking forward to doing, and which was such a bummer because we got to the community section and everything fell apart, and we didn't get to highlight Maurice Von Veen, who is our first Nats ambassador. And we, followed up in the Nats Slack, and we said it on the Zoom call and everything. So people were made aware. We directed people to the recording of his video. But that was such a bummer. It was such like a anticlimactic, ending. I was just saying, man, this, like, to me, all the other stuff earlier on, all the, customer things, user things, the next demos. And I was just like, but I really wanted to get to Maurice, because he was just such a valuable community member. And that really just, as you said, that weekend, I was just like, oh, that was such a bummer how that all ended. But, the AMA, I think, recovered a lot of the engagement with the crowd. So ultimately, I think it ended well, and people were like, this was a great event, and they were supportive of us in dealing with what happened at the end.
Yeah, and I kind of want to say this, need to say this. These things mean an awful lot to everybody involved. We kind of put our heart and souls into this. And I know on the Saturday morning, I think you was awake quite early, and you were like, I can't remember what it was, but it was like along the lines of TLDR, sup? I'm like, meh, I'm just still depressed from yesterday. Just kind of like, yeah, it kind of impacted a whole lot. And again, what it felt like was we created this excitement train. So we went through the videos, we kind of set the scene, we went through, and again, the next video, the Kevin, the demo, that was done live. It created so much excitement. And by the time we got through those sections and we got through to the community, it was like we'd set this stage for Maurice. Yeah. And when I did the video with Maurice, obviously we knew already what was going to happen. And I was dying inside, just trying to hide things. And I gave a few little Easter eggs away in the video. Now, if you go back and watch the community video with Maurice, you'll see me kind of like, well, we'll chat soon. And I gave a few hints. But I was kind of like, it was just a mega excitement piece. And then not being able to take that stage and then use it. It was big just
down. Yeah, for sure.
It was, yeah, it was huge. But there we go. And I know Maurice, he took it like a champ, and he really genuinely he didn't seem to have any kind of complaint with it. But I think from our point of view, all the best plans and everything, it just all kind of like blew up in our faces, which was a little bit of a shame. But alas, it is what it is. And again, congrats to Maurice. I mean, he's a great person anyway. But then, like, knowing that he learned Go for the server, I mean, yeah, wow.
And like
that was insane.
And everyone should go back and just watch his video, because he's such a nice and great person, and the fact that he teaches as kind of another role that he serves, and he wanted to contribute to the server, so he spent time learning a completely different language that he was unaware of. It's like, that's not the expectation of all people or future Nats ambassadors or anything like that, but it was really interesting to hear his story. And for context, again, like, we met Maurice, he's been around in the Nats Slack for ages. He's been in the GitHub repo for a long time, and you just see this repeated pattern of just helping and helping and helping, and him, you know, doing things, filling gaps, answering questions, directing people to the proper resources, fixing bugs when he sees them, and it just on and on. We're like, man, we just have to, you know, acknowledge this person. And, you know, everyone likes to be acknowledged differently, or some people don't like to be acknowledged at all. But this one was really important to us. So yeah, we can't talk enough about him. So anyway.
Yeah. Real life hero. I'll die on that hill. Maurice is great. Absolutely. So, gonna kind of flick the switch a little bit here. So 2024, we're right in January. We've got, let's call it 11 months of runway, maybe 10 before we get to the next kind of Rethink Con ready for, can I say this yet? 2025? That seems like miles away, but it'll be here before we know it. I know that much. So if we could take, say, 3 big things this year that anybody in the Nats community looking at what we're doing, can you maybe present 3 kind of, I guess, not even big ticket items, but 3 big things that we've got going on this year? Obviously more Nats FM episodes, and we've got plans in the works for at least another 2 or 3 on some really key, you know, information and patterns and stuff. But in your mind's eye, what have we got in store for 2024?
Yeah. So on the Nat side, so Nex, we keep bringing up Nex again. That's a pretty apparent one. And funny enough, at the time of this recording, it actually recently just got open source. So there you go. So by the time you listen to this, you'll either have seen it, or you can go and check out the repo. There's a blog post and things like that. But that's going to be an interesting one. And for those, again, who didn't get a chance to watch the video, or is like, what is this thing? It's a Nats execution engine. And the brilliance of it is really that in its design is the ability, there's a couple things, but one is the sort of realization that when you run a workload, you sort of have these long living workloads, you know, that is a service effectively. And then you sort of have this like function based, you know, invocation on demand kind of thing, like AWS
Lambda-esque kind of thing. Yeah.
And the design of the actual engine under the covers leverages Firecracker, so which is an AWS open source project. But the way that the developer experience effectively of being able to say, I can prepare a workload, and this workload can be modeled as a, you know, single binary, 64-bit binary. It can be modeled as a JavaScript function running on V8, or it can be a WASM function, you know, compiled from your favorite language. And they all 3 of those things are supported, and we're evaluating OCI runtimes as well for containers. That's a slightly different story, so that didn't get integrated right now because of some of the weight, the heaviness of some of those runtimes. But the fact that you have basically up to 4 different ways of expressing a workload in terms of your development, but the user experience once you deploy the workload, which, and this is another brilliant thing, which is it uses Nats Object Store to actually deploy the workload. And so you basically push your code or your binary or whatever it is into Object Store bucket, and then the next node can, you know, spin up a VM and you know, run and execute your thing. So I think especially in the chat when Kevin demoed that, it just blew up, because they're like, you can do what now? And like, I don't need to use like 3 different separate runtimes or 3 different separate services to express this spectrum of workload type and the model of the workload. And the fact that it's all Nats native, and again, because of the ability to, you know, spin up a set of instances or replicas of your workload, and it's bound to like a queue group, and you know, you get all those things for free because it is all connected back into Nats. So anyway, I'm still rambling about that, but I think for 2024, the whole intention of open sourcing Nex as the core engine, it's an imperative model in the sense that like you have to spin up your next node and your agent and things like that. But there's really good documentation already on the website, in the Nats docs website. And I think we're going to just garner so much feedback and so much interest. And for people who are already using and leveraging Nats, this is going to be, I think, a breath of fresh air to be able to say, I now have a Nats way of doing workloads. And for people who are coming to Nats or maybe aren't using Nats in, in their applications, they're going to come at it and say, I can model these different workload types in one consistent developer experience. That's compelling. And they might learn Nats as a result of that. So it's another entry point for people who, need to run workloads that maybe don't want to use existing solutions that are, Kubernetes centric or require a managed service or whatever it might be. I'll pause there if you have any additional thoughts since you're smiling.
Oh, I'm smiling because I'm kind of like in love with the whole next piece. I mean, my excitement hasn't died down from Rethink Con. A couple of things worth talking about though, and this kind of came up in the chat. I know Holger Winkleman. I probably need to thank him personally for this, but there was some confusion where Next lives in the ecosystem. So let's just, I guess, highlight this, and I'll ask some dumb questions, and you can dig me out of a knowledge hole. Next, does it or does it not fit under the Nats ecosystem from a CNCF style kind of management approach?
So this is a Synadia open source project. So does not fall under the Nats.io organization. It's not part of the CNCF. It's still Apache 2 licensed. And the intention here is providing this engine so people can, use it, run with it, they can deploy it, they can set up schedulers around it, that type of thing. From Synadia's perspective, and, we have our Synadia Cloud offering, we have our sort of platform on-prem managed version of that as well. And the intention there is that to provide these higher level tooling and abstractions on top of this core Next engine, in terms of like, declarative scheduling and scaling out to all the regions that exist, across Synadia Cloud and things like that. And that's really like a hosted version. And there's going to be some, niceties on top, but we're not taking away the fundamental engine that can actually run your workload. And that's the key thing, because, and again, for listeners who are using Nats, and you may have come across like the idea of leaf nodes, for instance, there's a parallel here, which is you can be a Synadia Cloud, customer. There's, again, a free account, so you don't have to pay anything, but you have the ability via Nats to extend, the hub, which is Synadia Cloud, and, multi-region, multi-cloud supercluster. But if you want to extend Synadia Cloud out to some edge device, and you want to run your own NAT server with a leaf node connection back up to the hub, you can do that. It's not we're not saying you need to have this proprietary Synadia server thing, deployed on, and you have to pay a licensing fee or anything like that. And the idea with Next as a parallel is that even though we're going to provide the ability to eventually users can ship workloads up to Synadia Cloud, and we can schedule them and do all this, scale them, similar to a PaaS of sorts. It does not prevent you to run your own Next node on-prem, at a device, whatever, that plugs back in to Synadia Cloud as the hub. And so it's a similar model. And the fact that when you run a Next node on some device or some edge thing, you can still take advantage of the scheduler within Synadia Cloud to actually deploy and run and pin workloads, to those edge locations, for instance. But it doesn't prevent you from developing against it, running this in your CI workflow. So we wanted this to be the same, degree of accessibility for developers. And it even comes, and people will probably see this in the blog post, but it even comes with its own baked-in UI for development purposes. So you can still kind of see, what are my workloads running? This is going to be separate from, the Synadia Cloud UI and things like that. But the whole purpose behind this is to really engage the community, really engage developers. And this was a very clear vision from Kevin, who led this entire effort. So we're really looking forward to people trying it, adopting it, knowing that they can, again, run it themselves. And then once we have that Synadia Cloud offering, they're, again, able to extend that offering at edge locations, similar like you can do with, a Leaf node, for instance. So that was a long answer, but a little bit of context as to, we did not want to put it under the CNCF in this case. It is, a Synadia project, but no intention to remove this as an open source thing that people can just go leverage. We'll build value on top where we find it necessary to do, similar to NATS itself. But yeah, we wanted to kind of keep it under the Synadia portfolio.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And thanks for yeah, it's one of those ones I kind of knew the answer, but obviously it wouldn't be much of a conversation if I went, did the question and answer all on my own. Yeah, it's kind of important, I guess, from my point of view, that we get some clarity out there on what this is and what this isn't, so we're not governed by the same kind of rules and constraints as the actual NATS server itself. And that's just something important, I think, for anybody listening that might be either involved from a maintainer point of view as well, that, Synadia is not just entirely focused on NATS, despite being like the kind of responsible for the bulk of the maintenance in its initial creation. Okay, so that's one thing for 2024. Yeah. So what about number two?
Yeah, hopefully number two is a little more straightforward. So I think another one, and this is always interesting when coming up with identifying sort of like roadmap items, let's say, or where we projected to go, 6 to 12 months from now. And I know projections can be a tricky thing, but when there's an inflection point when we have direct access to, obviously, customers that are very large scale, and they're like, right now we're doing this kind of workload, but in 12 months, 18 months, we're going to, 10x, 100x the workload size. And the workload in this case is not Next, because we were just talking about that, but specifically like the NATS KV. So NATS KV, again, for those who don't know, it's I hope you know by now, but it's very popular and very cool. But it's effectively a client-side abstraction on top of a stream, a NAT stream. But it provides you like basic KV semantics in addition to sort of a watch operation that is basically a consumer off of a stream, as you would expect. And the number of people and customers and use cases that have cropped up around the KV, and we even heard it with the customer and user videos that you recorded. I think KV was mentioned in every one, or at least 4 out of 5. They were like, yeah, KV, this is why we're using it, blah, blah, blah. And in some respects, we sort of hear two sides. They say, okay, this is great. Like, we can actually get this KV capability. We know where to use it for our use case. Maybe they didn't have an existing KV bit of infrastructure, but they're like, they can now leverage it because they don't have to deploy any new infrastructure to get that leverage. And that's sort of, we always reiterate this, the beauty of NATS, which is like, it's effectively like a toolkit. You have your messaging, your streams, your KV, your object store, all under one server component, all under one client SDK. And there's no additional dependencies to get all those capabilities. So some people say this is now an enabler. We've heard this with object store as well. And then there's another class of people who say, I have existing KV infrastructure. So this could be Memcache, it could be Redis, it could be whatever. And they're like, I use, the KV support today in NATS is very basic, a key, which is a subject under the hood, and then a set of bytes, so a blob, effectively. There's no, value semantics. And for a lot of use cases, that has been sufficient. But what's interesting with 2.11, that's going to be coming, and then other future developments this year, is that there's kind of two aspects that we're needing to focus on because of either demand or because we know that the scale is increasing even more. So the one, addressing the value semantics bit, is introducing some a set of value semantics such as counters, lists, sets, and maps are sort of the four that we're targeting. And those are the most common ones that we have heard feedback from and observed that people have requested that they're currently using Redis for. And don't get me wrong, Redis is awesome, and the amount of data structures it supports and operations, but in practice, not all of those are used. Like, people pick Redis, they use like a subset of the capabilities, and then they just, that's it. So these four value semantics are going to be coming later this year, and I think that's going to increase the adoption of KV even more, potentially replacing existing KV stores. And then, like I said, the other one was just anticipating scale. So there's going to be a lot more work that's going to be going into the file store layer, supporting larger and larger scales. Like, we have people, for example, in Synadia Cloud that are like running at like 100 million keys or something ridiculous. And we just keep hearing bigger and bigger use cases. For example, like, customers want to store, every credit card, thing in a KV bucket, and they want to watch for changes or something or whatever. It's like the cardinality can be massive, as you might imagine, for really large scale customers who have a lot of their own customers or entities that they have to manage. So I'll stop there, because I would say those are the two major things on the KV side that we're leaning into more this year. Basically just anticipating the demand, anticipating the scale to come, and we don't want to be, behind the curve on that one.
Yeah, KV is a huge, I think, a huge value prop for just, kind of, I hate calling it vanilla NATs. I'll call it OSS NATs. There we go. Obviously, anything as well we've got going on the Synadia side, I think it's just become like a staple part of what most people expect now. So we've got type semantics and scale on the KV, which is a kind of killer, really. I think for the third, I'm going to probably jump in. I know I've asked you kind of like the three, but I'm getting more and more excited about the Synadia Cloud offering. I think I've said this quite a few times. It's no secret that I don't go off and do kind of Udemy. I don't know. How do you pronounce it? Udemy or Udemy? I've heard it pronounced like 3 or 4 different times. Udemy, yeah. Well, Udemy, Coursera, those kind of things. I don't get a lot of joy. They don't spark joy. I do these things, and tried it, don't like it. Well, I go off and just build scrappy projects. Go off and build like a crappy micro SaaS idea or something just to learn from and see where it goes. And things that I see coming up again and again, we see this, on the community Slack. I see it in the normal kind of indie dev and software communities. The same things come up again and again and again, and that's kind of like this AWS-like experience to provision a resource and gain access to that. So, stand up an EC2 instance, get a key, great. Set an IAM profile up. So with NATs, it might be, create an account, get a key, something. And this is all basic stuff. It'd be like introspection. Can I see what's actually going on in the UI? In a stream, I want to look at the KV if I've got access to that. It's all the most fundamental stuff. I want to be able to monitor something very, very simply and easy, as well as introspect. And moving away from the kind of NGS kind of V01 experience maybe to a more fully functional kind of cloud UI, and having that level of utility. And I think that's going to be a big deal, I think, for this year, as we find a lot of developers kind of feeling more at home using the kind of cloud resources instead of building their own on premises all through the kind of NATS OSS components. So despite this being NATS FM, I think Synadia Cloud, which it kind of encompasses all that kind of tech anyway, I'm getting more and more excited about that. And not just because I've stepped into the product management role, but because as a user, it now does more of what I want it to do.
Yeah, 100%. And that one's an interesting one because, again, for listeners, we did sort of a soft launch at KubeCon last year in the
NA, North America KubeCon.
And so, we had our booth and we showed it off, and people were like, oh, that's a really nice, pretty UI and blah, blah, blah. But we sort of, with Caleb, who leads that team for Rethink Con, we wanted to do like a more formal demo and showcase of what the capabilities, why it's valuable. And it is one of those things, and like we're not, at Synadia, we say this all the time, but it's like people come to us not just because of, this product. They come to us also because we have a whole team of distributed systems experts who have a very long history of how to design and build systems at scale that have weird topologies. And what we've encoded in Synadia Cloud and what we've, encoded in design decisions for next and what we're encoding for future products that we're going to be announcing this year is really just, and we, our tagline is like rethink connectivity, rethink things, rethink that. And, there's the status quo of how people approach problems and thinking of solutions. And I think what our team has and what we're able to like bake into our products in terms of expertise and best practices is really differentiated. And so I see Synadia Cloud as being, you have a pretty UI, that's great, but all of the security aspects in there and all of the, best practices of scope signing keys and key rotation and all this stuff that you can technically do with NSC, for those who know what that is, and you can create your own JOT provider and so on and so forth. But it's like that's all just baked in, and you can do cross account sharing. And I'll just call out, like, not to cause some potential flame, but we have gotten feedback before. They're like, oh well, you have the open source project, but now you're not actually improving those open source components to make it easier. You're now going to just bake it into your product that you're going to require selling. And that was never in the intention. That was not at all part of the consideration. Like, these are open source projects that have been developed over years prior to even Synadia forming. and it's like, there's opportunity. And frankly, we actually do have some planned work to, for example, improve NSC. We actually are going to be rolling some of the core capabilities into the NAT CLI proper, because that's the utility that most people use. So there's no intention to like not make things easier, because they should be. We want, like, our funnel of people coming into the NATS community are developers. And if it's a pain for them, if the dev experience is poor, they're not even they don't care about Synadia products, right? So they need a path in that is simple, easy to use. And then, we can provide a really good experience for the product offerings we have, but we're not going to take away and neglect the community projects that frankly made what Synadia is today, right?
And that's really worth some thought, actually. So if you're out driving the car thinking, hang on a minute, guys, this sounds like just a story for, a license to go off and make money. It's not. I mean, NATS existed before Synadia came along. It kind of filled a niche. It was filled a need, sorry, not a niche. And it was created, can I say this in innocence? It was created to solve those requirements because it was foresaw where this industry was going. And then Synadia came along as a commercial entity. I think we provide a lot of support services. So even if you take OSS and it becomes mission critical, and I've worked in businesses where you want that hand holding just in case stuff goes south, or you're going to do some rolling maintenance. You might need some help with that, especially if you don't want to get thrown under the bus by your own management team. I mean, we've all been there. So Synadia is not this kind of big evil thing before anybody gets any of their kind of wrong ideas. So there's work going on across all of that. But I think we're just in this position, whether we call it kind of, developer experience will, I think, be improved both across the commercial and kind of OSS nature of the components and the features as well. Just making me, I think, even just as I say, without my Synadia hat on, just I kind of look at this stuff now and think, how can I build stuff to be the simplest way possible? So gone are the days where you have, front end talk to API talk to database. I want to scale up, stick a load balancer in front of it. Now I've got a license headache with a database. How do I make this thing scale out? And a lot of these things just tend to disappear. And the thing that got me about Rethink, by the way, and this is probably an admittance, I was like, I hate rethinking about things for the sake of it. Or buy our product. So rethink what you do and you can buy our stuff. I kind of want to burn down whoever says that. And then when I hear myself saying it, I'm like, I better justify this pretty quick, because if me from a year ago is listening to this, I'd want to find current me and punch him in the face. So like Rethink Con, it's rethinking connectivity. It isn't to take what you know and love and throw it away. It's to try and make your lives easier. So you'll regularly hear Byron say HTTP developer, and I think he's coined that now. I think till death do your part, mate. That's kind of your term. And I know Adam from the changelog called it, was it API developer? Yep. And then you kind of coined the HTTP developer. And if you're building things that are very, I don't know, synchronous maybe, they're kind of glued together at high level semantics. And, again, HTTP is not evil, it's not bad, but it's just a way of the world. And I think when you can take a right step, and I don't mean right as in the right thing, I mean a left step then, maybe just to avoid confusion and words. Yeah, we can take a step that's, sideways or some forwards, whatever. I'm getting lost now in steps. And make your life better. So give you an example. One of the patterns that I've got when I'm building UIs, I've got a rule of one philosophy. So for instance, if I've got a set of records with high cardinality, like a client record, for instance, and I want to delete that record, and then there's a load of sub-records below it, I won't let the API hold and spin whilst I'm deleting those on the database. I'll delete the primary key set of data, just delete that one row, and then I'll do a nats pub into a stream to delete the rest of the records, including all the files and everything else, and then send a notification to the UI, either via an SSE or even over the WebSockets or something, to say the files have been deleted and what have you. But before I started using Nats, like where do you go with that? So what would you do? And people go, oh yeah, but you can use all these other different components. But then I'm having to glue together multiple different sets of technology to achieve the same thing. And it's been so transformative for me. I can hear myself defending some of the things that we say do, but only because I've gained from just being a standalone, kind of developer and indie hacker away from the Synadia work. So it becomes a very different thing to hear yourself say in public, as opposed to hawking it as a kind of representative and a salesperson. And that's genuine. It's from the heart. I'm not trying to say anything weird here.
Yeah, and on that point too. And again, for listeners, it's I know I keep saying that, but both David and I, in particular, and a lot of the people that Synadia employs, were all Nats developers, Nats users prior to joining. So we had that developer experience in mind in terms of wanting to have a really good one. So that's the sort of one thing. So keeping that top of mind, making things simple, and then also trying to position Nats for different audience types, because you might enter it whether you are an HTTP developer or something else. It's like, why would this resonate? Why does this mean anything to me? How can it resonate? And then you can, we have this term like land and expand, and like land the point, like connect with the person, and then you can expand out to all the other capabilities, why it's cool, blah, blah, blah. So that's really important. And I think with Nats, it's, it's rethinking things in a way, but not, again, for the sake of it. It's like you will run into some pain at some point. And I think when you choose to rethink things or think of alternatives or explore alternatives, it is usually driven when you have some kind of pain. And specifically, you do have to scale up, or you do have to add this additional dependency, or you do have to do something else. And really part of our our mission at Synadia, other than building products, is just try to educate people, to make them aware that this is another tool. This is why it exists. This is how you can be leveraged. This is why you might want to choose this over something else that maybe you are historically more comfortable with. And, make that argument to say this is operationally simpler. There's, fewer dependencies. It's, from a developer, from an operations person, from an architect, from a security person, we can check all these boxes to say this is why, Nats as one thing is actually a lot simpler versus maybe a lot of the alternatives. That was a bit of a ramble, but it does always come back to saying, we put on Rethink Con not just to, we showed off effectively one product. We showed Synadia Cloud. The rest, was all open source Nats or Nats ecosystem types of things, or, people using it within their companies. And want to keep, focused on that, promoting that. And we have a lot of exciting, product things coming up this year, but we have a lot of, Nats ecosystem things. And we literally have a whole team dedicated to just the open source side of things and ecosystem side of things to improve that, make releases more, consistent and frequent, try to garner more contributors. So there's a lot of good stuff coming this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to probably finish off with a couple of things, actually. One, Maurice is our first ambassador. So he's going to gain access to more of the team. I guess some kind of company resources as well. I think one of those, there's some kind of perks in terms of going to events, having more input, and being involved in some of the kind of design kind of efforts as well. I mean, Maurice is well deserving of that. But hopefully it shows as well that there's some kind of give and take. It's not just a case of give us your time and we'll take that and just put your name on a list and say, thanks, man, have an emoji and your name on a contributor list. It's actually more value than that. So if anybody's looking at this thinking, hey, I want to be involved, well, come and join Slack, say hello, come and get involved, and maybe even have a chat with Maurice. Just reach out to the guy and make some intros. I know the community is very small but very active. So yeah, I think the ambassador, the announcement, again, it still stings that we never quite managed to take advantage of the excitement that was built, but there we are. So the ambassador one's kind of big for this year as well, I believe, as everything else we've got going on. And then in terms of episodes for this year, we've got the next 2 or 3 planned. I think I don't want to ruin it now, but we've got the next 2 will probably have additional guests instead of me and Byron just yammering on for the best part of an hour. Any suggestions for episodes as well? We've had multiple requests of when not to use Nats. So I think probably spoiler alert, that'll probably be one of them actually. Maybe examples of when not to use it, where it shouldn't be used or what it's not good for, which is going to be difficult, I think, because we're all wired for the positive aspect of where it can be used. And so I dare say that one might bite us if we get some of that stuff wrong, and a lot of it will be navel gazing, I guess, but maybe we can take that one on. It could be a fun one to do. Plenty of outtakes and bloopers for sure. So any ideas, please say hello. Either leave comments on this video, join our Slack, and suggest anything that you'd like to hear from as well as any additional, I guess, demos and content. And there's probably more in the works for this year for that as well. Certainly more videos, more content. Yeah. Anything from you, Byron? Any words of wisdom?
No, just it's super exciting year. There's a lot coming. So everyone keep your eyes out for fun things and just get engaged, especially, again, not to yammer on about Next again, but that's a significant new project. So get engaged if you want, direct access to on a private channel, with a use case you have in mind that you want to learn more about. Because again, we're building out some of this capabilities to run workloads in Synadia Cloud in the future. If you have clear use cases and you're like, this is exciting, I want to leverage that, please come talk to us, because we like to hear these things. We're not developing this in a black box by any means. So
yeah, cool stuff. And everything we've spoken about, all the links will be in the show notes for this episode as well. So thanks again, I guess, for listening to Nats FM. Welcome to season 2 for 2024. And let's see where we go. And in 10 months' time, maybe we start rethinking 2025. Who knows? Brilliant stuff. We'll catch you soon.